It was December 8, 1974, at the Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis, Tennessee. The temperature outside had dropped to a bitter 28 degrees, with a light snow dusting the parking lots and creating a magical winter wonderland that seemed fitting for the season. Inside the packed arena, however, the atmosphere was electric, with the warmth of 12,400 devoted fans who had come to see the king perform in his hometown during the Christmas season. Elvis was 3 songs into his second show of the evening when a sound from the audience stopped him mid-performance and changed the entire trajectory of what would become one of the most emotionally powerful concerts of his career. The voice belonged to Sarah Beth Williams, though nobody in the arena knew her name at the time. She was 6 years old, with curly blonde hair that bounced when she moved and bright blue eyes that seemed to hold all the wonder and innocence that childhood could offer. Sarah Beth was small for her age, barely reaching her mother's waist, but she possessed something that size couldn't measure. A voice that was pure, clear, and heartbreakingly beautiful. Sarah Beth lived with her mother, Carol Williams, in a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Memphis. Carol was a 28-year-old single mother who worked double shifts as a waitress at Mel's Diner on Union Avenue, serving coffee and comfort food to truckers, night shift workers, and anyone else who needed a hot meal and a kind word. Life hadn't been easy for Carol, since Sarah Beth's father had walked out when their daughter was just 18 months old, but she had built a life filled with love, determination, and the unwavering belief that her little girl was destined for something special. The apartment they shared was tiny but immaculate, decorated with Carol's careful attention to making their small space feel like home. The living room walls were covered with Sarah Beth's artwork from kindergarten, finger paintings of rainbows, crayon drawings of houses with crooked chimneys and smiling suns, and a special section reserved for her attempts at writing her own name in increasingly confident letters. But the centerpiece of their modest home was an old upright piano that Carol had bought for $50 from a church that was closing down. The piano was far from perfect. Several keys stuck. The wood was scratched and faded, and it desperately needed tuning. But to Sarah Beth, it was the most beautiful instrument in the world. She had shown a natural affinity for music from the time she could walk, humming melodies that seemed to come from somewhere deep within her soul, and picking out simple tunes on the piano keys with an intuitive understanding that amazed everyone who heard her. Carol, who had taken piano lessons as a child before her own family's financial struggles ended such luxuries, had begun teaching Sarah Beth the basics when she turned 4. What started as simple exercises quickly evolved into something extraordinary, as Sarah Beth demonstrated perfect pitch, an innate sense of rhythm, and a voice that could make grown adults stop whatever they were doing and listen. By age 6, Sarah Beth knew dozens of songs by heart, everything from children's lullabies to hymns she'd learned at the small Baptist church they attended on Sundays when Carol wasn't working. But her absolute favorite was an Elvis Presley song that played regularly on the radio station Carol listened to while getting ready for work each morning. Sarah Beth had memorized every word, every inflection, every emotional nuance of the song, and would sing it with such feeling that neighbors would sometimes gather outside their apartment door just to listen. Carol had been saving money for months to take Sarah Beth to see Elvis perform. As a lifelong Memphis resident, she understood the cultural significance of Elvis Presley. He wasn't just an entertainer, he was a hometown hero who had put their city on the map and brought pride to working-class families like hers. She wanted Sarah Beth to experience that connection to their community, to see what could happen when someone with talent and determination refused to give up on their dreams. The tickets had cost Carol nearly 2 weeks' worth of tips, money she probably should have spent on winter clothes for Sarah Beth or repairs to their aging car. But when she saw her daughter's face light up at the mention of seeing Elvis perform, Carol knew she would find a way to make it happen. She had managed to get 2 seats in the upper section, not close to the stage, but inside the building where Elvis would be performing, and that was what mattered. Getting to the concert had been an adventure in itself. Carol's car had been acting up for weeks, making concerning noises that she couldn't afford to have diagnosed by a mechanic. She had borrowed her neighbor's car, promising to fill up the gas tank and return it in perfect condition. Sarah Beth had worn her best dress, a red velvet outfit with a white lace collar that Carol had found at a thrift store and carefully altered to fit perfectly. The little girl had insisted on carrying her small purse, the one shaped like a ladybug that had been her birthday present earlier that year. As they walked through the arena's corridors toward their seats, Sarah Beth was wide-eyed with wonder at the sheer scale of the venue and the energy of the crowd. She had never been in a building so large, never seen so many people gathered in one place, and the excitement was almost overwhelming. But when the lights dimmed, and Elvis took the stage in his white jumpsuit adorned with golden eagles, Sarah Beth's amazement transformed into something approaching reverence. For the first hour of the concert, Sarah Beth sat quietly beside her mother, absorbing every moment with the intense focus that children bring to experiences that capture their imagination completely. She clapped at the appropriate moments, swayed gently to the rhythm of the music, and sang along quietly to the songs she knew. Carol watched her daughter's face throughout the performance, seeing reflected there the same sense of wonder and possibility that she hoped would guide Sarah Beth throughout her life. Elvis had been performing with his usual energy and charisma, commanding the stage with the presence that had made him a global icon. He had opened with several of his more energetic numbers, getting the crowd warmed up and engaged before transitioning into a slower, more intimate portion of his set. It was during one of these quieter moments, as the arena settled into respectful attention, that something magical happened. Elvis had just finished performing a beautiful ballad and was taking a moment to connect with his audience, sharing stories and creating the kind of personal atmosphere that made his concerts feel like intimate gatherings despite their massive scale. The arena was quiet, except for the gentle murmur of appreciation from the crowd, and it was in this moment of relative calm that Sarah Beth's voice cut through the silence like a beam of pure light. She wasn't trying to get attention or cause a scene. She was simply so moved by the music she had just heard that she began singing, her clear, sweet voice carrying the melody with perfect pitch and heartfelt emotion. The song she chose was one she had practiced countless times at home, and she sang it with the unself-conscious joy that only children possess, completely unaware that her voice was carrying much further than she intended. At first, only the people immediately around Sarah Beth and Carol noticed the singing. A few nearby fans turned to look at the little girl with the remarkable voice, smiling at her obvious passion for the music. But sound has a way of traveling in unexpected directions within the acoustical environment of an arena, and Sarah Beth's pure, untrained but naturally beautiful voice began to reach sections of the audience that were much further away. Elvis, who had developed an almost supernatural awareness of his audiences over nearly 2 decades of performing, sensed a shift in the energy of the crowd. People weren't looking at him anymore. They were turning in their seats, looking up toward the upper sections, trying to locate the source of the beautiful singing that was weaving through the arena like a gentle thread connecting every person present. The king stopped mid-sentence in his conversation with the audience and tilted his head, listening intently. His years of experience had taught him to pick up on unusual sounds during his performances. Sometimes it was a medical emergency that needed attention. Sometimes it was a disturbance that required security intervention. But this was different. This was music, pure and innocent and heartbreakingly beautiful. "Hold on, folks," Elvis said into his microphone, his voice carrying clearly through the arena's sound system. "Y'all hear that? That singing?" The arena fell completely silent as 2,400 people strained to listen. And in that silence, Sarah Beth's voice became even more clear and present, filling the space with a sweetness that seemed to touch every heart simultaneously. Elvis walked to the edge of the stage, shielding his eyes against the bright lights and scanning the upper sections of the arena. "That's a child singing," he said, wonder evident in his voice. "And she's got the voice of an angel." Sarah Beth, suddenly realizing that the entire arena was listening to her and that Elvis Presley himself was talking about her singing, stopped abruptly and tried to hide behind her mother's arm. Carol, overwhelmed by the attention her daughter had inadvertently attracted, gently encouraged Sarah Beth to stand up so Elvis could see her. "Don't be shy, baby girl," Elvis called out, his voice gentle and encouraging. "That was the most beautiful thing I've heard all night." "What's your name, sweetheart?" Carol helped Sarah Beth stand on her chair so she could be seen, and the little girl managed to call out, "Sarah Beth Williams." "Sarah Beth Williams," Elvis repeated, his voice warm with genuine affection. "How old are you, Sarah Beth?" "6," Sarah Beth replied, her voice stronger now as she overcame her initial shyness. The crowd responded with appreciative murmurs and gentle applause, recognizing the special nature of this unexpected moment. Elvis nodded thoughtfully, then made a decision that would transform the evening from a typical concert into something truly extraordinary. "Sarah Beth," Elvis said, "I want you to know something. In all my years of performing, I've never heard a 6-year-old sing with as much heart and soul as you just did. You've got a gift, sweetheart, a real gift." He paused, looking up toward the section where Sarah Beth and her mother were seated. "Now I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to think about it carefully. Would you like to come down here and sing with me?" The arena erupted in applause. But it wasn't the usual screaming excitement of a rock concert. It was warm, supportive applause, the kind that acknowledges something precious is happening and that everyone present is privileged to witness it. Sarah Beth looked at her mother with wide eyes, hardly able to believe what was happening. Carol, tears already beginning to form, nodded her encouragement. "Go ahead, baby. This is your moment." What followed was one of the most logistically complex and emotionally charged audience interactions in Elvis concert history. Getting a 6-year-old child from the upper sections of an arena to the stage required coordination between multiple security teams, venue staff, and Elvis's own crew. But everyone involved understood that they were facilitating something special, and they approached the task with the kind of care and attention usually reserved for handling precious artifacts. It took nearly 15 minutes for Sarah Beth and her mother to make their way from their seats to the stage area, with Elvis entertaining the crowd throughout the process by telling stories about his own early experiences with music and the importance of nurturing young talent. The audience remained engaged and patient, sensing that they were part of something that would be remembered long after the concert ended. When Sarah Beth finally reached the stage, Elvis knelt down to her eye level, making her feel comfortable and safe in what must have been an overwhelming environment. The stage lights, which seemed bright from the audience, were almost blinding up close, and the size of the crowd became truly apparent when viewed from Elvis's perspective. "You doing okay up here, Sarah Beth?" Elvis asked gently, his voice picked up by the microphones, but spoken directly to her. Sarah Beth nodded, still somewhat overwhelmed, but beginning to relax in Elvis's presence. There was something about his manner, patient, kind, genuinely interested in her as a person rather than as a novelty, that put her at ease. "What song would you like to sing with me?" Elvis asked. Sarah Beth whispered her choice, and Elvis smiled broadly. "That's a beautiful song, sweetheart. You know all the words?" When Sarah Beth nodded confidently, Elvis stood up and addressed the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet Sarah Beth Williams. She's 6 years old. She's from right here in Memphis, and she's about to show you what real talent sounds like." What happened next transcended entertainment and entered the realm of pure human connection. Elvis began the gentle introduction to the song, his guitar work simple and supportive, creating a musical foundation that would allow Sarah Beth's voice to shine without overwhelming her small but powerful presence. When Sarah Beth began to sing, her voice filled the arena with a purity and emotional depth that seemed impossible from someone so young. Every word was perfectly pronounced, every note precisely pitched, every emotional nuance delivered with the kind of authenticity that cannot be taught or manufactured. This wasn't a cute child performing for adults. This was a genuine artist sharing her gift with the world. The audience was transfixed. 12,400 people sat in complete silence, hanging on every note, every word, every breath. In the upper sections, you could see people wiping away tears. In the front rows, hardened music industry professionals were openly crying. This wasn't just a performance. It was a moment of pure magic that reminded everyone present why they had fallen in love with music in the first place. Elvis provided gentle harmonies and supportive accompaniment, but he understood instinctively that his role was to frame Sarah Beth's talent rather than compete with it. His years of experience guided him to exactly the right musical choices: when to add his voice, when to step back, when to provide instrumental support, and when to simply let Sarah Beth's natural ability carry the moment. As the song reached its conclusion, Sarah Beth's voice soared on the final notes with a power and emotion that belied her age. The last note hung in the air for what seemed like eternity, and when it finally faded, the arena remained silent for several seconds as 12,400 people processed what they had just witnessed. Then the applause began. Not the typical screaming and cheering of a rock concert, but something deeper and more profound. The kind of appreciation that acknowledges true artistry, regardless of the age of the artist. The standing ovation lasted for 7 full minutes, with people throughout the arena wiping away tears and acknowledging that they had just witnessed something truly special. Elvis knelt down beside Sarah Beth again and whispered something in her ear that only she could hear. Her face lit up with joy, and she threw her small arms around his neck in a spontaneous hug that nearly brought the house down all over again. When the applause finally died down, Elvis addressed the crowd one final time about Sarah Beth. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you just heard is proof that talent, real talent, doesn't depend on age or experience or training. It comes from the heart, from the soul, from places inside us that we don't even fully understand." Sarah Beth just reminded all of us why we love music in the first place. He looked down at the little girl standing beside him. "Sarah Beth, I want you to promise me something. Promise me you'll never stop singing. The world needs voices like yours." Sarah Beth nodded solemnly, understanding somehow that she was making a commitment that would shape the rest of her life. Elvis finished the concert with renewed energy and purpose, but everyone knew that Sarah Beth's performance had been the true highlight of the evening. After the show, Elvis spent time with Sarah Beth and Carol backstage, encouraging the young girl's musical development and giving Carol information about local music teachers who might be able to help nurture her daughter's obvious talent. He also gave Sarah Beth one of his signature scarves, along with a note that read, "To Sarah Beth, never forget that music is the language of the heart. Keep singing, and the world will keep listening." Elvis, Sarah Beth Williams, went on to have a successful career in music, becoming a respected gospel and country singer who always credited that night in Memphis as the moment she knew her life's purpose. She kept Elvis's scarf and note throughout her career, often sharing the story of that magical evening as an example of how one person's kindness and encouragement can change the entire trajectory of another person's life. The concert became legendary among Elvis fans, known as "The Night a Child Made the King Cry," or simply Sarah Beth's concert. Bootleg recordings of that evening are treasured not just for their musical content, but for the captured moment when 12,400 people witnessed the raw power of pure, innocent talent being recognized and celebrated by one of the greatest performers in music history. Years later, Sarah Beth would say in interviews that the most important thing Elvis taught her that night wasn't about singing technique or stage presence, but about the responsibility that comes with having a gift. "He showed me that talent isn't just something you have," she would explain. It's something you owe to the world, and when you share it with love and authenticity, you can touch hearts in ways that go far beyond entertainment. Jai. The story of that December night in Memphis serves as a reminder that sometimes the most powerful moments in music history come not from elaborate productions or perfectly planned performances, but from the spontaneous recognition of authentic talent and the willingness of established artists to share their platform with others who deserve to be heard. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, proved that night that true greatness lies not just in commanding the spotlight, but in using that light to illuminate the gifts of others, especially when those others are children who represent the future of music and the continuation of the artistic spirit that connects us all.